Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We have a great guest today. This is Ocean. Ocean is going to be a great guest, everybody. So sit back and enjoy. Ocean, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm interviewing with you from Hawaii today, so everything's good.
Everything's good in Hawaii. That's right. So,
Yeah.
so tell us, why don't you briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get into your story. So first, introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about how you got to be who you are today.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it sounds great, Paul. I'm Ocean. I work as a raw vegan chef, and I cater the Woodstock Fruit Festival. I'm the head chef at Woodstock Fruit Festival every year, and I teach classes on Zoom, and I have some recipe books. So mostly, I consider myself a gourmet fruitarian. So I take these fruitarian dishes and kind of elevate them and do them French style. And I have a whole bunch of different cuisines that I enjoy doing. But for the most part, I'm a nature enthusiast, very into movements, athletics, yoga, rock climbing, snorkeling while I'm here in Hawaii, and meditation. The more time I can spend in the woods, the better. So whatever you call that, I guess a nature enthusiast. That's what I am.
Yes, that's wonderful. I got so many questions. So, when you were growing up, were you sick, or what made you decide? Well, first, how when you were growing up, how was it? Were you into health or not growing up?
No, not at all. No, I grew up in Ohio, and my parents were, they did the standard American diet. We ate mostly frozen foods, heavily meat based, sometimes two or three meats in a single meal. But they did what they could to, to be healthy. We never starved or anything, but salads were something that were just decoration, but no, I was never sick. I always had pretty good health, never broke any bones, never got any diseases or anything. So my childhood was pretty uneventful, but I did spend a lot of time outside and got a love for nature. Growing up in Ohio, and took up running in high school, just as a kind of excuse to be out in the forest, and um, got an interest in botany and the animal kingdom when I was out there because there's such a um, you know, diverse fauna and flora there. So went to summer camp a few times, and I was run by these teachers who would normally science teachers during school time, and then they would spend the summer teaching like a science camp. So that was really the big focus of my childhood, was riding my bike and being outside as much as possible. But in terms of my diet, no, there was no focus on diet. It was just whatever was cheapest at Costco.
So, what age were you when you stopped consuming animals?
I tried one time when I was in college because I was a little curious, and back then it was lentil loaf was kind of the choices in the high school cafeteria. But I moved out of my parents' house around 17, and then had my party phase. And by the time I turned 21, I'd actually stopped drinking and became a little more health focused. Around the age of 24, I got into Buddhism, Taoism, meditation, yoga, and then veganism was an extension of that. And I had some friends who were vegetarian, and I went to visit them in Missouri for a weekend. We would go hiking and camping and swimming and things. And they happened to be running a marijuana farm there, so I was helping them trim. And this was probably mid 90s, I would say, somewhere around there. Yeah, 94, 95. And they gave me a book called Diet for a Small Planet. And I read that book, and, just for something to do, because we were out in the forest in Missouri. And then they said, well, what did you learn from the book? And I understood about animals not being necessary for protein, and how you get all your protein needs and all your nutrients from just plant-based things. But what really hit home is they asked me to, drive out to a chicken rendering plant. So it's where the chickens were slaughtered and actually rendered into packaged uh, meat to be at the grocery store. And that was the pivotal point of my life. I never ate animals again after looking at what they call I guess the blood field, where just endless chickens with no heads were just bleeding out. And you could just drive to the end of the road and see they just let them bleed and go on a big conveyor belt. And the one thing that struck me was it wasn't just one or two or 1,000, it was millions of them. I mean, it never stopped. And that's what really hit home. And I decided I just didn't want to contribute to that after just physically seen what a slaughterhouse looked like, and have never ever considered animals to be food after that.
Wow. So, and how old are you now?
I'll be 52 in 2 months.
Okay. So, when you decided you were going to stop eating animals, I know you had some
Hmm.
friends that were already vegetarians, but prior to that, I mean, I know you said you tried it once before, but did you really know what to do, or you were just you learning as you go?
That's a great question because back then vegetarianism was like a cult thing. I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's maybe a couple books that were out there that would show you how to cook lentils, and rice and beans was basically the mainstay of it. But no, any vegetarians we were kind of on our own. But I did gravitate toward having vegetarian friends because I was so interested in it. And um, I started off with thinking about animals because I love animals so much. And I was like, I don't want to pay to have someone slaughter animals for me. So I slowly transitioned and stopped eating red meat, and then stopped eating chicken and stopped eating fish just slowly, um, just not to put my body in shock. But in the end, what really helped was I had this community of people that I met at the Pittsburgh East End Food Co-op, which is still there. It's a food co-op that um, is, I think that back then they were vegan. They didn't sell meat or anything. So I started meeting people who were like in the punk scene, and some people who were in the hippie scene, and this kind of get together where we would have potlucks, and I participated in Food Not Bombs, and we would take the leftover produce and go feed people who didn't have enough food to feed themselves, all vegan food. And then also going to rainbow gatherings. And I think almost every rainbow gathering I've ever been to has vegan food just because of the logistics of it. It's very hard to bring bacon and milk and meat out to the forest and live for a whole week without it going bad and poisoning everyone. So that's what really drove it home, is I learned from people how to make tacos and burritos, hummus. My favorite thing was fried potatoes and bean and black bean and rice burritos, and lots of potatoes back then. But you're right, there was really no direction. You were kind of on your own if you were a vegetarian in the 90s.
So even though so you did it for, was the main reason you did it for because of the animals at the time?
Hmm.
That was your
Hmm.
main reason at
Yeah,
the time?
yeah, yeah. Because I saw I connect with animals, and I sometimes I always had dogs growing up, and I never made the connection with the animals that we choose to eat. And after studying Taoism and Buddhism for a while, I kind of got this more elevated view of the world, and that we're not the center of the world as humans, that we participate, we've artificially, moved ourselves out of the food chain. But really, I think it was the idea that if you have an animal or something that's completely under your control, completely at your mercy, really the mark of a person, their spiritual value is how do you treat someone when they can't fight back? And that was really really drove me, is these cows, you look in a cow's eyes and you see that they have love for their kids and pigs and everything. So why do we make pets out of the cute ones and kill the ones that we don't like as much, or the more docile ones? And so that whole thing, it was more about compassion and empathy for me, and kind of stepping away from egocentric ideals. And so I was driven more by religion and philosophy than anything else. But the health benefits really emerged. I had cystic acne. That was really my main issue when I was a teenager. Very painful. I was actually in a medical book where they took pictures of my shoulder because I had scar tissue there that had cystic acne in it, and it persisted. No matter what they did, they couldn't get away from it. But there was one dermatologist who put me on a vegan diet temporarily. That's kind of what I mentioned. I tried it out for a little bit, and that did alleviate the symptoms. But that leads us into why I went raw. Is I tried a fruit diet for about 2 weeks. It was recommended by this website called freeacnebook.com. And by the time I was 28, I was just tired of having acne. So even the vegan diet, eating a cooked food vegan diet, I found community there, and I found finally I was able to satisfy my need for practicing empathy and practicing compassion and connecting with nature. But in terms of my health, I would say it didn't really change all that much going to a cooked food vegan diet, but I really saw a drastic change once I stopped cooking my food.
So, just like when you went into veganism, when you stopped cooking your food, is it something you did as you went along, or is it something you studied on how to do it first?
Yeah, I did some research for I don't know, probably about 6 months. I had a job where I didn't have much to do. I work as a software engineer, and that's my career. And at the time, it was between projects, so I started Googling like how to fix acne. And I was going to try anything. I tried all kinds of different remedies, mostly topical remedies. I had retin A, which helped a lot. That's vitamin A, but it made me really sensitive to the sun. And I just kind of felt left out. I couldn't go in the sun with my friends. I get really sunburnt. And I just wanted to live a normal life off of medicine. And again, that kind of ties back to minimalism and Taoism, where I just wanted to let go of these factory produced things that I didn't want to have to depend on them, and started using more natural toothpaste and natural shampoos and, the typical hippie ideal of just living out of nature. But that was a jump. I just jumped headfirst in
I
that
think I
world
understand that
of raw
world
veganism.
completely.
You know what I'm
I get
talking
what you're
about then, right?
saying. Yeah, I don't even know. There's no razor blades in this house. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we live just recently, I mean, the past 100 years, we started making products for ourselves that were coming out of factories. So, just in the kind of giant timeline and being more, uh, more harmonious with nature, I felt I wanted to live a more, for lack of a better word, a more ancient lifestyle. And so raw veganism just fit perfectly into there. But what got me into it was I read that, if you ate fruit for 2 weeks, and your acne would go away. And that worked, but it was the 4 years of veganism, eating all organic and eating no animal products. That's what let me jump into it. I wouldn't say that I could have jumped into it right from a standard American diet or a meat diet, but after all that preparation, I woke up after 2 weeks of being very strict, just eating about 2 pounds of fruit each day, and then a cucumber, avocado, tomato salad with a little bit of olive oil on it. I think the website's actually still there. It's freeacnebook.com. And I followed it very strictly and didn't do any cooked food. I think it actually recommended using raw fish, but I just used sprouts instead. And I was hooked. I was like, I have clear skin now. I can throw away all these medicines. That was the final thing that I needed to do to become like a real nature guy.
How did your vegetarian friends react when you told them you're not going to eat any more cooked food? Because I'm sure when you're on a a vegan diet, even you're eating a lot of cooked food still. But when you told your vegan friends, "Hey, I'm not gonna eat what you're making anymore because I'm raw now," how'd they take that
Yeah.
information?
Uh, that's an interesting question because it was all tofu back then, right? You just 800 different ways to cook tofu, a lot of Thai food. But what I did is I'd always had some interest in making food, and I'd had some interest. I worked in restaurants since I was about 14, and was a sous chef in several different restaurants as a teenager, and even in my early 20s. So I just started mimicking the cooked food, and not knowing it was a trend or anything. But I thought, well, how can I make hummus without garbanzo beans? And I thought, well, maybe I could sprout them. And I read some books by I think it was Ann Wigmore was the big one back then. Um, Arnold Ehret was another one, Dick Gregory, and they all had these simple like coleslaws and things like that. So that kind of got me started on this gourmet idea. And my friends, they loved my food. I mean, I made raw vegan sushi one time using shredded coconut instead of rice, and I took it to a party, and that was the first thing gone. And I made sweet potato pie for Thanksgiving, all raw, just blended the sweet potatoes and put some spices in it, some psyllium husk. And again, that was gone first thing. So I had a lot of support from my friends
Yeah.
because of it, because I was, introducing them to, well, you can turn the flavors up to 11 if you just don't fry and cook everything.
So, how tall are you and how much do you weigh?
I'm 5'10" and I weigh 152 pounds right now.
So
And that's,
when you went from a vegan diet to a raw food diet, did you lose weight?
oh yeah, about 30 pounds. Yeah.
So
And
wait.
I needed to lose it. Yeah.
So you went when you were doing the standard American diet to a vegan diet, did you lose weight?
Uh, I did at first. I was always about I've always been pretty active, so I weighed about 135 pounds in high school. But then as soon as I got a job, which was a desk job, I ballooned up to about 180. And that
Okay,
was on a standard American diet. And then the vegan diet, I lost some weight, but I was kind of gravitating toward fried food and Indian food was my big
sure.
thing, which is a lot of oils, you know.
Then vegan to
Um,
raw, you lost 30 pounds.
Accidentally, I did not mean to at
I mean,
all,
were you
but I
glad or
went
were you
from
concerned? Because,
I didn't notice at all. I just knew to notice that I had a lot more energy and I was waking up at 5 in the morning to go running and I was doing cartwheels. I started doing martial arts and I rode my bike everywhere. I just was like I had a new lease on life. And I think wasn't just the food, it was more that I was now like I I mean, you know this feeling, on a raw vegan diet, especially you get this honeymoon phase where you're like, I can see things better, colors are brighter, I can smell better, everything. I'm more sensitive. It just feels like your whole body is like an almost like an orgasm all the time. All the that were dead for just woke up, and I think that contributed to it. But
yeah.
in terms of intentionally losing that weight, I think it was just a combination of my needing to lose weight and also just being more like vivacious and not sitting around and just being not lazy, but just doing minimal activities, I guess. Yeah.
So about 24, 25 years of being all raw,
Uh-huh.
give us an example of your daily diet these days.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? My phone
Give us an
blipped for a
example
second.
of your daily diet, like today.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, it changes seasonally. But I'll give you an example of what I'm eating now. This morning I had three big papayas, four passion fruits, one big mango, um, and I made some macadamia milk. That was probably not much, maybe about 10 ounces of macadamia milk. That was dates and macadamias and water. And then for lunch, I'm having a bunch of dried mango here and a kombucha. This is I think a cherry flavored kombucha that I got at the store. And then for dinner, we're making cauliflower curry, which is going to be rice made of shredded coconut, fresh shredded coconut. I took some cauliflower, froze it, and then thawed it again. And then I'll make a sauce with tahini, fresh lemon, fresh tomato, some sun-dried tomato, and some curry powder, and then put some shredded carrot and some cilantro and some green onion on it. Um, so that's interesting. I would say that I'm only on this diet for a couple weeks because I'm here in Hawaii, but all the abundance here in Hawaii makes it so easy to do all fruit in the morning. Um, but I could give you an example of my winter diet. I have these coconut wraps that I make. So I do a arugula. Oh, let me start with breakfast. Breakfast would be watermelon, cantaloupe, just some sort of melon, and I'll eat a big melon. And usually some juice. Sometimes I have a carrot, celery, apple juice for in the morning. I don't really eat a lot of food until maybe around 2 in the afternoon. And then I have my coconut wrap, which is like my big meal of the day, and I'll make about five of them with arugula and zucchini and tomatoes and jalapeno. Um, what else do I put in there? A little bit of tahini or avocado as a dressing. But I don't use salt. I don't use oil, so I get a lot of my fat from just the foods themselves, like avocado and tahini. And then for sometimes I'll do a sprout salad, which I'm really big on. So I have sprouted garbanzo beans, lentils, mung beans. Sometimes I'll make flax crackers and soak those. I sprout sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Um, Mung dal is a big one. I make a lot of Indian food, all raw. So that's if someone asks me where I get my protein, it's like I get so much protein from all these sprouts, it's ridiculous. Um, and then I guess sometimes I make tacos with my friends. I'll have cucumber, avocado, tomato salad sometimes. A big butter lettuce salad with tomato and some cumin powder and maybe little bit of tahini on top of it with and then in the summer I'll just eat like 6 ears of corn or like 40 figs, whatever seasonal. And I do a lot of mono mealing, I guess is what it's called. But for me, it just feels like I don't want to adulterate the food. Um, what else do I eat? Sometimes I'll do like a shredded apple, zucchini, carrot salad. Sometimes gobi matara, which is peas, and cut up zucchini for potatoes. I could go on and on, but
So
that's kind of the pattern is,
so
fruit
when
or
you
juice in the morning, then a big meal in the middle of the day.
so do you just eat do you have set meals or do you just eat whenever you're hungry?
That's interesting because I was actually gaining weight again, which I didn't like because now I had to buy all new clothes, and I realized it was because I was eating when I wasn't hungry. I was eating set meals and I was thinking, oh, it's breakfast time, it's lunchtime, it's dinner time, or I was traveling, I was going out to restaurants, raw gourmet restaurants, of course. So now my sign is I need to be really hungry before I eat, and then I'll eat and for an hour or two until the food no longer tastes good. So I shifted recently into just eating when I'm hungry. Yeah.
Are you able to tell when you're really hungry or not? Because most people have a habit hunger, and I mean, true hunger
Yeah,
is something most people, at least in this country, have never even felt. So we just got a habit
that's true.
hunger. So, like,
That's true. Yeah, they get the
are you
false
able to
hunger.
determine the difference? Because a lot of us eat with our eyes. I mean, you could be like, "Well, I'm not hungry," and then if you see a durian or you might be like, "Well, I could eat. I'm hungry now." So, like, are you able to tell the difference?
Yeah, what I do is I notice when my energy starts to dissipate. So it's not I've recognized when I eat out of boredom, eating because I'm actually thirsty and just need water, eating because it's like a ritual, or as you said, there's just food around all the time. So what I do is I kind of keep my fridge really minimal and I just buy food for like 1 or 2 days at a time. And then when I start to think, oh wow, starting to feel a little bit tired, and that usually happens around 2 in the afternoon, and then I can't think of anything but food, right? If I'm thinking, oh man, I would really love to make some food right now, like I should, stop what I'm doing, or if I'm doing some activity like rock climbing or indoor bouldering or something, I'll come back and I'll feel really tired, and then I'll eat, but I'll eat slowly enough so I don't overeat. That's kind of a recent lesson that I've learned, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what true hunger actually feels like. For me, it feels like an energy drop. That's what I feel.
Sure. So, first, I think it's great that even after this long doing a diet, you're still experimenting. I think that's so important because I'm always coming up with new ideas and trying new things. And I think that's great that you're not stuck like just doing one thing. So, that's good.
Yeah.
My thoughts on true hunger is I mean, have you done much experience with fasting?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've done 42-day coconut water fasts and juice fasts, and I don't do them very often anymore. But yeah, I know the concept of fasting is just fascinating to me, and I think it's a appropriate tool. But you kind of lose that hunger after a while, and food starts to look weird. That's
What
what I
about water
remember.
fasting? Have you done water fasting?
Yeah, I've done water fasting, especially in the early days of being raw vegan, to try to flush out the old diet and more emotional reasons. But yeah, water fasting. I've done two long water fasts in my life, both about 40 days long. Yeah.
Wow. And that for me, I asked that question because that's what my answer is like when you water fast, you kind of realize what true hunger is because after the first
Yeah.
3 days of a fast, the first 3 days are the hardest part. After that,
Yep.
it's so easy. There's no appetite, and
Right.
and then finally, when your appetite comes back, you know it's time to break the fast. But I mean, to know that we can go 30, 40 days with no food and be perfectly healthy and fine,
Yep.
it's not true hunger that we feel when we're eating. It's like a habit hunger, especially on
Yeah.
a daily basis or 3 times a day and so on. And I
Mhm.
think most people are overeat and eat, especially people or even people that are into eating raw foods and so on. And even eating raw food, overeating on it consistently long time can get us
Mhm.
in issues. So I think, you know, what I write about and talk about, I mean, the main reason I do this is it's from a disease standpoint. I was healed of a disease and I
Mhm.
try to help other people with disease. But I think, we could say from a spiritual standpoint or just a standpoint of contentment, kind of like everything you've discussed,
Mhm.
food is not our focus. Food is not, most people today, I believe, worship food. Their life is built around food and
Yeah.
everything they do is food. So I think when you kind of realize that, then your worshiping of the food or your hunger doesn't trick you into saying, "Hey, I'm gonna eat this much, and this much." You know, and
Hmm.
so for me,
Hmm.
I just try to be aware of that, and I gotta be honest, I'll call them gurus, but, uh, one of my best friends is in his 90s, and he's been eating raw for 60 years. His name's Doctor Fred Bishy, and I talk to him all
Hmm.
the time, and I have discussions with him like this, and if I'm overeating, he'll tell me. And if I'm doing something wrong, he'll tell me. And so it kinda helps keep me on track, and I do recommend
Yeah,
if
it's a good
people are
friend. Yeah.
doing this, they could have a health coach or whatever people wanna call it, or somebody to
Right.
be accountable to. Like
Yeah.
even what you said you were eating, I'm glad you said that you do in different seasons and that you
Hmm.
added sprouts more in the wintertime and so on, but, I mean, if you told me you were eating this way, like, all throughout the year, I might say, that's kinda like a lot, but the fact that you go back and you add more of the salad stuff and the sprouts, and you do it different in other seasons, then that's great to do that for a season, what you're doing, so
Yeah.
it's good. But yeah, so that's my thing. I just think, I try Fred Vishy told me something I'll never forget. He said, "When you can enjoy not eating as much as you enjoy eating, you've gotten to another place, another level." And, I think it's
That's
powerful
that's
to do.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I also find most people don't eat for nutrition or health. They're eating for, to feel a pleasure or a joy that they're missing in their life almost. The food is like the
That's
substitute
right.
for that. So,
It's like entertainment. Yeah, we treat food as entertainment because you think, oh, what do I want tonight? Chinese, or it's almost like we're picking on a movie. I want Italian or Mexican. Just that whole idea of, picking it out. You're not looking at the food, you're looking at the theme of the food. And I think also it's important to recognize that some people eat because they have these detoxing, their body wants to detox, so they keep circumventing or interrupting the detox by putting more food in their body. And that takes the energy away from it because the detox doesn't feel good. So I think that's what people get into a cycle of.
yeah, most people wouldn't even attempt to do what we're doing. I mean, I have people come to me with
Right.
cancer and other diseases, and I say, "I can help you get better." And I'd even give them like a little diet, some raw, not even all raw, but definitely vegan
Hmm.
and oil free, salt, sugar, oil free. And so, but they don't want they won't even attempt to do that. So it's like, well, but so as for you with what you're doing, uh, how's your health been? You said you started to put on some more weight. What about your blood work? Do you check your blood work?
I do, yeah. And I had a vegan doctor when I was living in Grass Valley that I found. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. He ran a clinic there. And they have the longevity, I think the longest longevity of any community. And they advocate a vegan diet. So I started doing my blood work when I was there, and he said, well, we should check your standard things like vitamin D and B12. And he did a whole panel. I actually kept the results from it because he said if he hadn't known that I was 48 years old, he would have thought I was 24 because everything was working perfectly. And I could have told him that because I'm in tune with how I feel.
Everything. Nothing
But
was out of range at all.
there was something out of range, which was my vitamin D. And the reason was because I was spending too much time inside on the computer. And he recommended I do sunbathing or take vitamin D supplements. I found some that were made from lichen. And my partner, she lives in Sweden, and she can actually collect this lichen off the rocks there. Also, from what I understand, mushrooms, when they're placed out in the sun, they can also manufacture vitamin D. I was low in vitamin D, but then he said, I was really surprised. I was expecting your B12 to be low. Do you take supplements or anything? And I said, well, I take that B12 nutritional yeast like once a month. I'll put a couple tablespoons on there. But all the major ones, all the B vitamins, iron, calcium, they ran the whole panel to see mostly how my organs were functioning, and that's what prompted his comment. Was he said, he understood that I'm doing things from a holistic point of view. Like I'm trusting nature to give me the correct balance of nutrients. I get in tune with nature and I look at the foods and I say, oh, that tomato looks fantastic today, and I eat it. And so I have this biofeedback with my food where maybe I need lycopene, maybe I need potassium chloride. All those things are present in the tomato, but my analogy is always like when I read a book, I don't say, oh, that book had a lot of letter E's in it, and that's why it was a good book. It's the holistic view of the book, and that's how I view food now. And it was very reassuring to have that blood work done, and I have it done every few years. I actually had it done in Eugene by a non-vegan doctor, and again, the same thing. He said he never even called me back to discuss the results. I had to call them, and they said, yeah, he doesn't want to schedule a follow-up. Um, and but in this case, I do have my vitamin D under control. I'll take about 7 vitamin D pills once every Saturday in the wintertime. In the summertime, this is what I do. I come to Hawaii and I make sure I get my vitamin D that way.
So
But
do
yeah,
you take
the blood work's important. Yeah.
it is. Do you take any other supplements at all?
Not supplements in the conventional sense. I recently started adding spirulina and chlorella because I understand that as we grow older, our protein needs go up. And I actually went through, I had an injury from martial arts 2 years ago, where my entire rotator cuff was 50% of it was torn. My arm got ripped out of its socket through basically some, uh, um, martial arts teaching that went wrong. That's the best way to put it. So injuries happen in martial arts all the time, but this was a severe one. And I went to the doctor and he had to put 7 pins in my rotator cuff and said, you're going to be lucky if you'll ever be able to raise your arm above your head again. Um, and I went to a physical therapist, did all the physical therapy. And what I did during that time was try to understand what I could do to build up my collagen, build up my protein, and basically give myself, things like vitamin C that would help me beat the odds. Because here I am, 50 years old. I don't want to have a bum shoulder the rest of my life. And it wasn't from deterioration or anything. It was from acute injury. So I had a pretty good chance of recovery from my perspective. And that's when I started adding spirulina, chlorella, doing a lot more vitamin C. Um, like, in other words, concentrate on making sure I had lemons every day and things like that. I started supplementing with sea moss, which is a very nutritious food, nori, kombu, dulse. Having talked with people who've also been on a raw food diet, that's kind of one of the things that you have to look for is the iodine. So adding seaweeds and algae back in my diet. If you consider those supplements, then yes, I do supplement. But in the sense that I buy things off the shelf, vitamin D is the only thing that I get. And then when I go to Sweden, I can just eat the lichen, which is in the pills anyway. So I don't know if that's actually a supplement, but nothing laboratory made, no.
Sure, sure. And how's your? I know your energy is great during the day, but how about at night? How many hours a night sleep do you like to get, or do you feel you need?
It depends on what I do that day. If I'm and the environment that I'm in. So when I'm in Hawaii, we're hiking and snorkeling, and so I'm getting about I go to sleep around 11, wake up around 4:30, so that's around 5.5 hours, and then I'm good. I mean, I could put myself back to sleep if I want to, but if I'm doing something like if I go on a run in the evening, I do a couple 10Ks every week, and if I go on a run in the evening, or I do a very strenuous hot yoga, I do vinyasa flow yoga, which can be very strenuous if you want it to be. But it's 110 in there, and it's usually an hour and 15 minutes. Then I have a zonked out sleep, and I'll just literally just shut down right around 9 or 10 in the evening. But then I'm up at around 5. I'm diurnal, so I go to sleep as close to sunset as I can and wake up with sunrise as I can. Um, but in terms of like the quality of my sleep, it really depends on whether I've eaten late that day. I found that has a big effect, and that's, as you said, about experimentation. So I set a limit for 7 p.m. If I eat before 7 p.m., I have a much more better quality sleep. If I eat after 7 p.m., then I'm up all night either drinking water or peeing, especially if there's been some onion and garlic in my diet. So I try to avoid those foods, but I'm still trying to figure out the sleep. But I wake up rested, and that's what's important. I never wake up like, oh, and I don't use an alarm. And I'm up with sunrise, and as soon as I get up, then I'm active. I'm doing stuff around the house, and I got a couple bunnies, and I, give them hay and play with them, and things like that. But the quality of my sleep has been pretty consistent. I guess I'm a good sleeper, but I can mess up my sleep if I like I said, if I eat too late or if I don't drain my energy with exercise during the day, then I'll have kind of a restless sleep or I'll stay up too late because I haven't drained it.
Sure, sure. I wrote a book called The Daylight Diet, talking about not eating
Oh
before
yeah?
sleep and not eating late at night. It's so important, and one of the big areas a lot of people mess up with their health. They eat too late at night. They eat right before going to sleep. Then
Yep.
they affect their sleep, which is the most important part of healing. And so it's just a
That's right.
cycle that people don't get off. But and so it's interesting.
And they use food
Yeah,
to numb themselves to put themselves to sleep too. Sometimes they'll eat really
yeah,
heavy and they say, "Oh, I can't sleep unless I eat heavy."
yeah, yeah. It's and so yeah, that's not a good way to fall asleep, to eat so much that
No,
you fall
it's
asleep at the table. It's not good. But yeah, man, that's great. So so you get out, you're active, and you're
yeah.
doing all these things. So what's your goal? Like what do you what's I mean, you said you have a partner. Do you have any children? Do you have a family, or do you just want to travel? What's your ultimate goals?
Yes, yes, and yes. So that answered all to those questions. Yes. So um, let's say my original goal. Well, I had a partner for about 11 years, and she had two kids when I met her, ages of 5 and 10. Um, we had vegan food. She wasn't raw vegan, but I would normally make my own food. And one of them actually decided on his own to become vegan. And we raised them together until they were both out of high school, and now they're in college. One of them just graduated a couple months ago from UCLA. The other one's going to graduate next year. Um, so I've had one family so far. Really, really enjoyed it. They were great kids. And now with my new partner, we want to have a second family, and I think that's really important to accentuate is that I feel like being on a raw vegan diet is like having a car and you put fuel in the car, right? And many people focus on, oh, well, I need to get my diet perfect. But one of my favorite quotes is like from Rumi, where it's ships are safe at harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And I think the car analogy is the same idea, but more Americanized, is that we put fuel in the car and we polish our car and make sure the engine is working right, but we never take it out for a long cross country drive, you know? And I think that's important. And I think that's how I've lived my life is um, kind of ties into to something you mentioned about, we talked about numbing things is being on a raw vegan diet is a very difficult lifestyle choice because you don't get you don't get anything to fall back on to numb yourself or filter life. And you have to experience life in both its ups and downs, its negatives and positive, grief, joy, all those things. There's no backup. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any stimulants. So I'm there. It's a raw lifestyle. It's not just food, and I'm there present with all of it. And that again ties into Buddhism and Taoism is just observing, and yoga helps with that, right? Is being the observer and experiencing things and understanding that life is not all about being happy. Life isn't about being sad. It's about experiencing things, and all these things just become like waves just washing over. And so the idea of living a long, healthy life appeals to me, and I honestly think it doesn't appeal to a lot of people. And that's why they numb themselves and they drink or smoke is they want to pull away from life. And I think that's a conscious choice. And I think you've made the same choice too, is you go forward in life and say, you know, bring it on. Like I want to live to 100, you know, I want to travel. So that is one of my passions is traveling. And I always thought, well, I want to be that spry guy and, you know, the grandfather who's just, you know, just bouncing around. And so I do headstands with my kid, with my stepkids, and we do push-ups and calisthenics. And I introduced my younger stepson to bouldering, and I still do that with him. And I just want to live life. I've never saw myself as like ever retiring or just sitting around and just being an observer. And the world's a big place, and so for me, the raw vegan diet is the tool that I use to be able to still see life in a new way each day and taste life and wake up excited about my day. And that's really what it's about for me. So I've almost put the raw vegan diet behind me and said, you know, what you got for me, you know, and there's mysteries in the universe that I'll never understand, but just stargazing the other night, you know, and seeing the Milky Way. I mean, I could do that for the rest of my life. I could stare at a little patch of grass and see all the ants and insects doing all their little jobs, you know, like botany is one of my passions too, and that's just the mystery of life and not numbing myself and just swallowing it as deeply and as I can. That's what drives me. I think now you've understood the essence of what I'm doing.
A great, yeah, a great way to put it. So you live part of the time in Oregon and part of the time in Hawaii?
Part of the time in Sweden, yeah, part of the
Oh, in
time in
Sweden.
Mexico, California, part of the time. Yeah, I'll be in Sweden for a couple months over Christmas. I always
Okay.
thought Sweden's just a cool place to be for Christmas. I just wanted to see what that was like. But I follow tropical fruit, and Eugene has some amazing stone fruits, and I forage berries, and I know all about the forest, all the edible stuff there. So I kind of follow the food a little bit, I guess. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So uh who's in Sweden? Is that Chris Kendall? Is he out there?
yeah, Chris Kendall. I visit him every time I go. We may have a
Okay.
big
Yeah,
pizza party.
I interviewed him recently. Yeah, so I know he's in Sweden. So I know a fellow raw food friend in on Maui, I think. It's do you know Stephen Reeves? Stephen Reeves?
I've heard the name, but I don't know him personally. No.
Yeah, you gotta meet him. He has a couple of farms out there on Maui, and they're growing durian, so it's really cool.
Nice. That's a good friend to have.
Yeah, yeah, and other people I know out there, but that's great that you're doing it, man, and you're just a perfect example of, you know, living life to its fullest, but you can only do that if you're healthy. You know,
That's
and you
right.
can only be healthy if you're doing the healthy things. It's not a diet, folks, it's a lifestyle. When you're doing this and you're so focused in life, you don't even know you're doing something different or special. You're just so focused in life. Food is
Yeah.
not the primary focus. But
Yeah.
it's
I hear you. Yep. That's
yeah.
absolutely right. Yep.
So when you say you're a chef, like I know you mentioned that you were the chef of the Woodstock Fruit Festival. So do you only do events or is that your daily job that you're a chef?
So I'm a software architect. That's my daily job, and
Okay.
it's just I was always into computers when I was a kid. I was a bright kid and got taught myself to program, and I've been doing that for a long time. And again, that's the fuel for my lifestyle. But I work remotely, and that's what helps me work remotely. And so what I'm doing is I'm transitioning into what I would call retirement, because I won't be on computers all the time. But I got about another 5 or 10 years in me of being a computer programmer before I retire. So I'm banking all that money. I save a lot of money as much as I can. I live a pretty austere lifestyle, and but I'm transitioning into what you're doing, which is this outreach program. So I have a bunch of recipe books that I've written that are specifically not targeted toward raw vegan people. Like I have nothing to teach someone like yourself. You already know what's going on. What I want to do is I want to expand the circle. And I noticed that when I first started with raw foods, Dick Gregory really influenced me a lot, as well as Victoris Kulvinskas. I love that guy. He's still around, and I hope to meet him someday. But I've met. Well, actually, I did meet him one time briefly at a lecture, and But then there's this outreach of people like what Dick and Victorious kind of cultivated is that you're even if you just insert a salad into your day, it's going to open that door. You don't need to jump in. And I lived outside for a whole year. I was like making my own clothes and riding my bike. I got rid of my car. I just dove in full, lived in a tent and slept outside during the summertime and traveled around with just a backpack and a tarp and a blanket, didgeridoo. Like it doesn't need to be like that. Just letting nature into your life, and just eating that one salad will open things up and maybe you lose a little weight. Maybe that's your goal. Maybe you just want to feel more energetic. But that to me is like taking nature's intelligence and its messages and bringing them into your life and allowing them to speak through you. Because a tomato has an amazing intelligence. I mean, we look, oh, it's just a tomato. No, you're just missing this incredible creature that just spent 6 months forming itself to perfectly feed you. Like that's why I like mono feeding. So that's my audience with these books is I want people who are used to saying, oh, I got a drawer full of menus. It's Indian food tonight, right? Or it's Italian food. So I theme all of my books and I try to mimic very famous cooked dishes. I have a beef Wellington that I just finished perfecting, but I have pastas and burritos and tacos and soups and stews and kind of the same thing that Chris does and Lissa and Nate, Raw Food Romance. I'm good friends with them too. I visit them in Vegas. I'll be visiting them actually next month. We all want to expand the audience, right? And any vegan is automatically like, like you're doing good. Like I don't have this idea that we need to be divisive, but I promote raw veganism because I believe in it. I don't think we need to cook our food, and it's actually a very freeing lifestyle. But I want to have people say like, "Man, that was awesome. What was that?" And I don't even say it was raw. I just say, "Oh yeah, that was an apple pie that I made." Cool, you got the recipe, and I'll show them the recipe. It's like, well, you don't even need to turn on your oven to eat it and kind of sneak it up on people. So that's my goal, is to move into lectures, one-on-ones, having a YouTube channel, a lifestyle channel, and widening this vegan audience and the raw vegan audience, especially. Like, there's many people advocating veganism, but I want to advocate specifically raw veganism because it appeals to people who are minimalist and want to go camping and traveling and like to eat fruit. So that's where I'm at. I kind of back up a couple steps when I make food for people and I say, what will hit all your pleasure points, right? Because I feel that people you need to work with people or address people or connect with people with where they're at. And many people are just still in the idea that food is entertainment. So I work with that audience and say, well, if you can eat one more salad a year, then that's progress. But at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, there's people like yourself, people that are on natural hygiene diets that don't do onion, garlic, or mushrooms. We don't do nuts. We don't do oil. We don't do salt at the thing. But we still make really fun food. Like we do tacos and coconut curry and dolmas and what do we do? Lasagna is the big one that we're doing. And this year I'm introducing a couple new recipes like fried rice and um, let's see, what are some of our other popular ones? Anyway, that's my outreach is I want to bring people in and see how fun this lifestyle is. And, you know, for whatever reason, we're all attracted to raw veganism, but there's still different flavors of it, still different varieties of it. But those that's my goal is to join the community more fully and get away from the computer and just live a full on, ambassador for
Or
this lifestyle.
yeah, if people want to get your books or just contact you to learn more about you, I'm going to put your website link below, but tell us what your website is.
It's rawvegan.love, .love. So instead of .com, it's .love. That's my Instagram also. If you type in rawvegan.love and you'll see pictures of all my fancy stuff. I'm trying to be like Michelin star presentations with all this food, but I got some books that are just family style and but I have a big discount on the books and what we can do is we can set up a code for your followers and maybe I'll send that to you later and that'll give them a discount on any of the books even if they just buy one.
Okay, I'll put all that information below the video and the description. And man,
Yeah.
it's so great to connect with you. Thank you so much for taking the time and keep up the great work. And I look forward to meeting you. If you're ever in South Florida, definitely come by and look me up. You can see my my fruit tree farm.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, Paul, I didn't know where you were located, but I'm in South Florida. I mean, the Woodstock Fruit Festival was there last year, but
Oh, that's what I was going to
when my
ask you. Was
partner
it?
flies in,
It was in
yeah,
Homestead last year, right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah, it was in Homestead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had it at a community that the infrastructure wasn't good enough to support our festival. So either we're going to buy that and fix it up, or we're going to find another community. But when my partner flies in from Sweden to visit me, we always land in Florida. So we visit Hippocrates, we go to Homestead and get all the
I
fruits.
live
So
10
now
minutes.
you're on my.
Yeah, I live 10 minutes from Hippocrates.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where my whole story began with the raw food, and I still go there. I see Victorious. I was just there last week. I go there quite often, and I'm in Homestead because I have
Oh,
another channel where I grow fruit trees. That's my shirt, Fruitful Trees. That's my
uh-huh.
YouTube channel, Fruitful Trees. But I'm in Homestead like once a month, just going down there and just having the best time with all the different fruits and people. So definitely we'll meet up when you're down here next time. Just give me a
That
shout
that
out.
sounds good. You're on my list now.
Wonderful, wonderful.
You're on my
Hey
list of
man,
people to visit. That's great.
yeah, thanks again and keep up the great work. And everybody click on his website,
You too.
rawvegan.love. And he's also on social media, Chef Ocean. And check that out. Is Ocean your
Uh-huh.
real name?
It's my middle name. Yeah, I'm actually it's a story. I have quite a long name. My dad gave me his name, but my parents thought they were going to name me after my grandmother if I was if I turned out female, and her name was Osceola, which is a Seminole Indian name.
Uh-huh.
And so they still decided, well, let's still give him that name. So they shortened it to Ocean. So that's right in the middle of my name. I find it easier to remember than the other, my all my other names. So
Yes.
that
No,
that
that's
one's the one I
cool.
go
That's
by.
cool. Chef Ocean. All right. You can't forget that, everybody, and check it out. And your recipes
Don't.
sound wonderful, man. And thanks again for joining us. Have a great
All
day.
right, you keep up the good work too, Paul. It's wonderful talking with you.
All right.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.